Unaware of wife's $200 million inheritance, husband divorced wife by text message after she lost her job. What she did next? He didn't just walk away. He ended a 10-year marriage with a text, "It's over, papers coming, take care." That message arrived the same night Grace Coleman lost her job. She sat at a candlelit dinner table she had prepared for two, the food cold, the house silent except for the soft buzz of the phone that ended everything. Across town, Ryan Coleman, her husband, was laughing over champagne with Amber, his design partner, celebrating what he called a clean break. But Ryan never knew the truth. Grace wasn't just a heartbroken, unemployed wife. She was the only heir to her late father's $200 million fortune, money she could access only after being unemployed for 60 days. She had always known about the inheritance trust. She just never knew its full, staggering value. Her father, wary of opportunists, had placed the estate under a strict vulnerability clause. The full details and the $200 million principal were to be kept secret by his lawyer, only to be revealed if Grace ever faced a true crisis, like the one Ryan had just created. While he thought she was shattered, she was making a phone call. Grace didn't reply to his message. She didn't chase, didn't cry. Instead, she opened the unlocked drawer in her home office desk, the one he never noticed, and pulled out the pendant with her family crest and a simple business card. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "Your silence will protect you when truth needs time." And so, she stayed silent, watching, waiting, planning. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about calm turned into power. Stay till the end. What she did next changed everything. The sharp hiss of sizzling bacon filled the air, breaking the morning stillness. Grace Coleman flipped the pan too quickly, grease popping against her wrist. But she didn't flinch. She was used to small burns, they healed faster than emotional ones. At 36, Grace looked like the kind of woman life had taught to keep moving, no matter how tired she was. Her dark hair was tied back, face clean, simple, not because she didn't care about beauty, but because she valued peace more. She moved with a quiet efficiency, a habit formed from years of balancing a demanding job and a marriage that required more and more of her. Across the kitchen island sat Ryan Coleman, 38, her husband of 10 years. Athletic build, charming smile, the kind that could sell anything to anyone. He was scrolling through his phone, eyes locked on the screen, laughter low and private. Grace glanced over her shoulder. "You'll be late again if you keep laughing at your phone instead of eating." Her tone was light, almost teasing. Ryan didn't look up. "Just business stuff," he said, smirking. The phone buzzed again, a message flashed, briefly across the glass, before his thumb swiped it away. "Amber, see you at lunch." The words burned into Grace's mind. Amber. He'd mentioned that name before. A new design partner, a consultant. Grace had tried to ignore the knot it tied in her stomach. She didn't react, didn't blink. She just turned off the stove, plated the food, and whispered softly, "Business must be good these days." He didn't answer. He was already standing, already checking his reflection in the microwave door, straightening his tie. Grace's hand trembled slightly as she reached for a drawer in the small home office nook in the corner of the room. The bottom left drawer, the one Ryan never touched. It was filled with her personal stationery, old journals and tax documents. It wasn't locked, it was simply hers. Inside, beneath a stack of old letters, lay a velvet box and a pendant engraved with her family crest, two intertwined wings surrounding a single diamond. Her late father's symbol. The weight of his memory pressed down like gravity. 3 years earlier, a man with silver hair and a calm voice sat across from her in a law office. Mr. Benson, her father's longtime attorney, placed a sealed folder before her. "Your father's estate is in a discretionary trust, Grace," he said, his voice gentle. "You will receive a generous quarterly stipend, enough to live comfortably. The full principal, however, is to remain confidential." Grace's breath caught. "Confidential? And Ryan? He's my husband?" Benson's eyes were kind but firm. "Your father requested complete secrecy. Not even your spouse may know." He was cautious. He saw how charming Mr. Coleman could be. He added what he called a vulnerability clause. "My instructions are to reveal the full extent of the trust only if you are ever in a position of significant personal or financial distress. A major job loss, a divorce, a moment where you are truly alone and unprotected." He Wanted you to know your own power, not to have it used by someone else. She had nodded slowly. Then I'll keep it buried. From that day, she carried the secret alone. She didn't know the full amount. She just knew she was safe. She lived on her stipend and her own salary, wanting a quiet life, a love that wasn't measured in numbers. Back in the present, Ryan's voice jolted her. You shouldn't work so hard, Grace. You stress too much. She turned, forcing a smile. Hard work built what we have. He kissed her cheek absent-mindedly, eyes still on his reflection. Yeah? Well, maybe it's time you let me handle the finances for a change. She laughed softly, setting the plate before him. Handle what? He'd been handling their joint account, the one her stipend funded for 6 months, and it was always surprisingly low. He'd claimed startup costs for his new design venture. He didn't answer. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Another. Smirk. Grace's eyes flicked once more to the open drawer, to the pendant gleaming faintly, to the envelope marked Confidential Trust Activation Clause. Logic fix. This is now just old letters. The real info is with the lawyer, making the drawer seem realistic. Her mind wandered to her father's voice echoing years ago. If a man ever makes you feel small, remember, Grace, your silence can be louder than his pride. She closed the drawer gently and slipped the key, now just a small desk key, not a secret key, back into her apron pocket. Ryan finally looked up. Did you say something? Grace smiled faintly. No, honey, just thinking about how unpredictable life can be. He grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door, phone still in hand. Don't wait up. I might have a late lunch meeting. Her eyes followed him, expression calm but unreadable. As the door shut, her gaze drifted to the pendant once more. The morning light hit it just right, and for a moment it glowed like a warning. Grace whispered to herself, almost a promise. Some secrets protect more than they hide. She took a deep breath, steady but heavy, then looked out the window. Ryan's car pulled away. Grace stood still for a long moment, the silence humming. Then she turned off the stove, cleaned her hands, and glanced at the family photo on the fridge. The hum of her phone broke the stillness. A work email blinked across the screen. Mandatory company-wide meeting. Today at 1 p.m. Her eyes lingered on the subject line. Something in her chest tightened the kind of unease that doesn't come from nowhere. She didn't know it yet, but by nightfall, that email would change everything and her secret would finally awaken. The conference room buzzed with polite laughter, but beneath it, tension moved like static. Grace Coleman stood near the back, clutching a file folder so tightly the edges bent. She wasn't supposed to be here. Ryan had called that morning. His tone rushed but charming, the same voice that always made her forgive too easily. Could you come to my pitch today? It's at 12:30. It'd mean a lot, Grace. Investors always like seeing a supportive wife. She had looked at her own calendar, her stomach dropping. The mandatory 1 p.m. meeting. Ryan, I can't. I have that all-hands mandatory meeting at 1 across town. It's the one about the restructuring. I have to be there. Please, Grace, he'd begged, his voice dropping. It'll be quick, I swear. You'll be in and out. Just be there for the first 5 minutes. It makes the investors feel secure, seeing I have a stable home life. Please, for me. She had sighed, giving in as she always did. Of course. Now, watching him at the head of the table, full of confidence, she couldn't tell if he needed her or the image of her. He looked every bit the man he wanted to be. Navy suit, polished smile, gestures rehearsed. Around him sat a half-dozen potential clients, all charmed. But Grace saw something the others didn't, the small lies hidden behind his confidence. She knew their rent was 2 months late, his credit cards maxed, his business proposal recycled from her old marketing plans. Still, she'd covered his overdue rent that morning with her personal savings. Because that's what she did, she fixed what he broke. Ryan's voice filled the room. Our design team believes in simplicity, class, and emotional connection. It's not just design, it's experience. The door opened quietly. Amber stepped in mid-20 seconds. Confident, striking, the kind of woman who always seems like she knows the camera is on her. Her red heels clicked softly against the floor. Sorry I'm late, she said, smiling directly at Ryan. Grace blinked, unsure who she was. This must be the Amber from the text. Ryan brightened. Everyone, this is Amber Lane, our design consultant. She's been helping me refine the visual concept. Amber crossed the room and handed him a folder. Their fingers brushed. A small private smile passed between them, too brief for the clients to notice, but long enough for Grace to feel it like a physical blow. Amber took a seat, sliding into the empty chair beside Ryan. Your tie looks perfect, she said lightly. Told you that color would bring out your eyes. The room laughed politely. Grace smiled too, a frozen, brittle expression. But her fingers tightened around her folder. She had picked his tie that morning. Ryan gave a modest laugh. She's got an eye for details. Grace's smile faltered. Her mind drifted for a moment back to when she used to pick his ties, iron his shirts, stay up late reviewing his proposals. Now another woman's compliment echoed where her care used to live. The meeting continued, filled with numbers and strategies, but Grace's attention was elsewhere. She checked her watch. 1:10 p.m. Her heart dropped. She was already late. The mandatory meeting was starting right now, across town. Every time Amber leaned closer to whisper something to Ryan, he laughed, not his usual laugh, but the soft, flirtatious one she hadn't heard in months. Still, Grace stayed supportive, steady, pretending everything was fine. That was her role, the quiet anchor. After the meeting, investors shook hands, promising follow-ups. Amber gathered her laptop, smiling at Grace for the first time. You're Ryan's wife, right? So nice to meet you. He talks about you all the time. Grace forced a small laugh. All good things, I hope. Amber's eyes flickered something between guilt and amusement. Of course, she said, then turned back to Ryan. Lunch after this? We should finalize that presentation deck? Grace looked at Ryan, expecting him to decline. Instead, he nodded easily. Yeah, sure. Grace, you don't mind, do you? Her throat felt dry. No. Go ahead. I have to get back to work. I'm late. She didn't add that she'd skipped lunch already or that she was heading back to an office in a state of panic. Ryan kissed her cheek, a public gesture for politeness, not affection, and followed Amber out. Grace stood still, watching them leave together, their laughter echoing down the hallway. For a long moment she just stood there, her folder clutched against her chest. Then she sighed softly, whispering to herself, he's just working. That's all. But her heart knew better. Grace turned to leave, shoulders straight, smile fixed. Her reflection in the glass wall caught her attention, tired eyes, fading warmth, and a flicker of fear. As she stepped into the elevator, her phone buzzed a new, urgent email from her boss. Grace, where are you? Harlan from HR is here. By this time tomorrow, Grace's world, her marriage, her work, her faith in everything steady would begin to fall apart. The sound of paper ripping sliced through the quiet office. Grace's hands trembled as she tore open the envelope stamped confidential. Inside was a single page with her name printed in bold. Notice of employment termination. Her heart skipped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The walls around her seemed to shrink. A knock came at her open door. Mr. Harlan, her HR manager, a kind man in his 50s with gentle eyes, stepped in, holding another folder. Grace, can we talk for a minute? She nodded, though her throat felt dry. He sat across from her, folding his hands carefully, as if even his body language needed to soften the blow. You've been one of our best project managers. This decision, it wasn't personal exactly. Grace forced a small, polite smile. Budget cuts? Harlan sighed. Corporate's restructuring. Half the department's being let go. But Grace, it wasn't supposed to be you. We had you on the retained list. You were pivotal to the new project. Her head snapped up. What? Then why? The 1 p.m. meeting today was mandatory, Harlan said gently. It was to announce the new strategy. Your name was called to lead the new team. When you didn't show, and with you already being late from lunch, with no call, management took it as a sign you were disengaged. You know how corporate is. They took it as a sign you'd already checked out. They moved you to the terminated list. I fought for you, Grace, but my hands were tied. I'm so sorry. His sympathy only made it worse. She felt the sting in her chest. She hadn't just lost her job. She had lost it because she chose to support Ryan. Her loyalty had been the weapon used to fire her. I understand, she whispered, though her voice cracked. When he left, she sat alone, staring at her reflection in the black computer screen, her own tired eyes staring back. She thought about Ryan. About his words at breakfast. Maybe it's time you let me handle things. Maybe he'd been right, or maybe this was the beginning of something she couldn't yet see. Grace packed her small box of belongings, framed photo of her and Ryan, a coffee mug, a potted plant. When she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed in her hand. She typed quickly, her vision blurring from unshed tears. Had a terrible day. Lost my job. Please, I just need you tonight. Her finger hovered over. Send. For a second she hesitated, then hit send and exhaled. The elevator doors closed, reflecting her pale face. A cafe across town, laughter echoed over the sound of clinking glasses. Ryan Coleman leaned back in a booth, phone on the table. Across from him sat Amber Lane. Your pitch went great, she said, smiling. Those investors love confidence. Ryan smirked. I've been working for this chance for years. Finally feels like things are turning around. His phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Grace. Had a terrible day. Lost my job. Please. I just need you tonight. For a brief second, his jaw tightened. He stared at the message, thumb hovering. Amber noticed. Something wrong? He flipped the phone face down, forcing a grin. Nothing important. Just home stuff. Amber tilted her head. You can't carry dead weight forever, Ryan. Some people hold you back without meaning to. Her tone was soft, but the words hit like glass. He hesitated the smallest flicker of guilt before covering it with a laugh. You think too much. Amber smiled, leaning closer. No, I think clearly. She's unemployed now? Ryan, this is your chance. You can't support her and launch the business. It's time to make a clean break. Outside, sunlight spilled across the street. Ryan's mind drifted for a moment to Grace, probably sitting at home, devastated, waiting. He could text her back. He could tell her everything would be fine. Instead, he turned his phone over again, ignoring the unread message. He picked up his glass. You're right. To new beginnings. Back to Grace. She stepped off the bus, clutching her box, the weight of the day pressing on her. She looked up at the afternoon sky. Her phone remained silent. No reply. The wind tugged at her hair as she whispered, maybe he's busy. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered something colder. Maybe he just doesn't care. She didn't know that miles away, her husband was laughing with another woman. And as she walked toward home, she passed a jewelry shop window. For a brief second, she stared at the image, her face, her wedding band, and something in her heart cracked. By the time her phone finally buzzed again, it wouldn't be the comfort she was waiting for, it would be the message that ended everything. The clock ticked loud enough to feel cruel. Grace sat at the dinner table, hands folded, eyes on the flickering candles that had already burned halfway down. The food was cold now, salmon and roasted vegetables, the meal she made every Friday night, because Ryan once said it reminded him of their honeymoon. Only tonight, he was 2 hours late. The sound of rain outside was soft but steady. Grace checked her phone again. No message, no call, nothing. She stared at the screen, then back at the empty chair across from her. He probably got caught in traffic, she whispered, trying to sound calm. Or maybe the pitch ran long. But in her chest, something hollow stirred. He knew she'd lost her job. He knew she was hurting, and he wasn't here. The front door never opened. The clock moved past 9. The candles melted into stubs. Finally, the phone buzzed. The vibration echoed, sharp as thunder. Grace's hand trembled as she picked it up. A single message glowed on the screen. It's over. Paper's coming. Take care. Her breath caught. The words blurred for a moment, her pulse loud in her ears. She reread them twice as if they could somehow change on the third try. But they didn't. A soft sound escaped her, not a scream, not even a sob, just a breath that broke. She placed the phone on the table gently. She didn't move for a long time. Her eyes fixed on the screen's glow, waiting for it to light up again. Nothing came. The rain kept falling. Her fingers brushed the edge of the pendant hidden beneath her blouse, the small family crest. Her mind ran through memories like snapshots. Their first apartment, the laughter, the plans. It all played in silence now. Then came a flash of anger, small but fierce. He didn't even call. 10 years, divorced by a text, On the same day she told him she lost her job. Tears gathered but refused to fall. Instead, she stood, picking up her phone again. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She typed, "Ryan, please. What does this mean?" Before she could press send, another message arrived, a short one. "I'm sorry. Don't make this harder." Her knees nearly buckled. The phone slipped from her hand, landing on the hardwood with a dull thud. She sank into the nearest chair, shaking. The glow of city lights spilled into a modern apartment. Ryan Coleman stood near the window, shirt undone, a drink in his hand. Behind him, Amber Lane leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "She deserves the truth," she said. "You said you'd end it clean." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I did. I texted her." Amber stepped closer, her hand sliding onto his shoulder. "Then it's done. You're free now." He stared out the window, silent for a moment. His reflection looked unfamiliar. "She'll understand," he muttered, convincing himself. Amber smiled faintly, resting her head against his back. "You did the right thing. Some people just don't belong in the same chapter forever." Ryan closed his eyes. For a second, guilt flickered across his face before disappearing. The candles had gone out. Only darkness and the faint sound of rain filled the house. Grace sat motionless, staring at her phone lying on the plaza floor. She whispered the words, her voice trembling. "Over? Just like that?" Then her eyes hardened slightly. Her grief didn't vanish, it condensed, sharpening into quiet focus. She reached for the pendant again, fingers brushing the small engraving. "You'll know when to use it," her father's voice echoed. What Grace did next would turn that single text into the biggest mistake Ryan Coleman ever made. The crash of a glass shattered the silence. Grace stood frozen, shards of the wine glass scattered across the kitchen floor. Her hand still trembled. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of burnt candles and untouched food. For a few seconds, she just stared at the mess. Then, slowly, she knelt and began picking up the pieces one by one. Her movements were calm, deliberate. Each fragment caught the dim light, reflecting flashes of memory. Ryan's laughter, his promises, his hand holding hers. In her mind, his voice echoed, "I'll always protect you, Grace. You'll never have to face anything alone." The sound of that old promise felt like a blade. She closed her eyes, pressing the back of her hand to her lips. The dining table still looked perfect, 2 plates, 2 glasses, 1 untouched meal. She stood, carrying the cold plates to the sink, washing them as if habit could erase pain. She washed the plate he'd eaten from every Friday for 10 years. She scrubbed the pan she'd used, the one he'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. But nothing could wash away the silence. When she finished cleaning, she walked toward the living room. She stopped in front of the small wooden drawer under the shelf, the same one that held her secret. Her fingers brushed the brass handle, hesitating for only a moment before opening it. Inside, the pendant gleamed faintly. In the back of the drawer, beneath old letters, was the simple, cream-colored business card Mr. Benson had given her 3 years ago. "Only call this number," he'd said, "if you ever lose your job and your husband. If you are ever truly vulnerable, it will protect you more than you can imagine." She had never wanted to use it, but life had decided otherwise. Grace turned the pendant in her hand, eyes glistening. "He thought I was broken," she whispered, "but I was only beginning." She crossed the room and reached for her phone. For a moment, she hesitated. The contact name, Mr. Benson, father's attorney, glowed on the screen. Her thumb hovered, then pressed, "Call." The line rang twice before a warm, familiar voice answered. "Grace, it's been a long time." She swallowed, her voice low but steady. "Mr. Benson, I lost my job today. And my husband, he just left me, by text." There was a pause, then a slow, knowing sigh. "Grace, this is the vulnerability your father spoke of. You have met the terms. He was right about him. Come by tomorrow morning. Bring nothing, I'll handle the rest." She ended the call and stood in silence, the pendant still in her hand. For the first time that night, her breathing evened out, not calm, controlled. She placed the pendant around her neck. "You always said silence was strength, Dad. I'm starting to believe you." The firelight flickered once, then dimmed. Through the window, a car's headlights passed briefly, Ryan's car, but it didn't stop. Grace didn't move. Her eyes followed the light until it disappeared. By tomorrow, she would learn that losing everything was the key to unlocking a power even Ryan could never imagine. The door to Benson and Associates swung open. The scent of polished wood and old paper filled the air. Grace stepped inside, clutching her bag tightly. Her movements were calm, but her eyes told another story, sleepless, raw. Mrs. Coleman. Mr. Benson, her late father's lawyer, stood from behind his desk. He was in his 60s, kind eyes, white hair. Grace tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. It's been so long." He motioned gently for her to sit. "No apologies, Grace. Your father made sure you'd know when the time was right." "The vulnerability clause," she whispered. "Precisely," Benson said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder, sealed with a red wax stamp. "Your father left this instruction to be executed if you lost employment and remained without income for 60 days. Logic fix. This line is removed, as it's the old, flawed logic." "Grace," Benson said. "Your father, he loved you, but he was a cautious man. He saw things in Ryan that you, in your love, were blind to. He didn't want to rule your life, but he couldn't bear to see you taken advantage of. He locked the principal of his estate in a discretionary trust." "I know," Grace said. "The stipend. It helped with the bills." Benson smiled faintly. "That's what he wanted you to believe. You've been living on a very generous stipend, but he forbade me from revealing the full amount unless Ryan proved his suspicions correct." He turned the folder toward her. "Your job loss, followed by his abandonment. You have fulfilled the terms. The trust is now entirely yours, free and clear." He opened the cover. "Grace, your father's company, Coleman Industries, along with his portfolios and properties, the total valuation is approximately $200 million. The words hit her like a sudden gust of wind. She didn't speak. $200 million. Her hands tightened. Her voice came out in a whisper. That can't be right. I knew about the trust, but not this. Not $200 million. Benson's tone remained calm. "Your father built more than one company, Grace. He never wanted you to depend on others, especially not on love that didn't value you." Her chest rose and fell. All this time, while she was begging for affection, forgiving disrespect, covering his late rent, paying off the credit cards he maxed out, she had been the one holding the real power. A tear slid down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly. Benson leaned forward. "Grace, are you all right?" She gave a small nod. "Yes, just processing," he continued. "He wanted you to live quietly until the day you needed strength. I think that day has come." She swallowed hard. "It came sooner than I expected." The sound of champagne corks popping burst through laughter. Ryan Coleman raised his glass high, arm draped lazily around Amber Lane. "To new beginnings," Amber said, smiling. Ryan clinked glasses. "And to freedom. No more scraping by. No more listening to complaints about budgets." Amber leaned close. "You did what you had to. She was dragging you down." Ryan hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Yeah," he muttered. "She'll be fine." Amber laughed. "She's probably crying into her pillow. She's got no job, no husband. What's she going to do?" Ryan forced a smile, but his hand tightened around the stem of his glass. At Benson's office, Grace stared out the window, city lights flickering below. Benson's voice broke the silence. "There is one other matter. The joint accounts and credit cards Ryan was using, they were all funded by your stipend. What, exactly, did he say he was using that money for?" Grace looked at him, her eyes hardening. "He called it business expenses for his new design firm." Benson nodded slowly. "I suggest we find out what kind of business he was running with your money." He handed her a final document to sign. "Your father would be proud." She smiled faintly, but it wasn't the same smile. This one had edges. As she stood to leave, her eyes landed on a small photo on Benson's desk, her father. Under it, a note read, "Strength is quiet until it's tested." Grace traced the words. "Then I guess it's time." She turned to go, tucking the folder under her arm. "The world has no idea what it's found." "About to learn," Benson murmured. Outside, Grace walked into the sunlight, her face unreadable, her silence heavy with purpose. The sound of typing filled the small, temporary apartment Grace had rented, fast and rhythmic. The room was dim except for the glow of two laptops. Lena Morales, early 30s, sharp-minded and loyal, sat beside her, a former co-worker turned forensic accountant. "Grace," Lena said, not looking from the monitor. "Are you sure you want to see this? Once we start digging, there's no unseeing what we find." Grace's hands were clasped in her lap. "I've spent years not seeing Lena. That's what got me here." Lena nodded. "All right, let's start with his email backups. You said he used your joint account funded by your stipend for business expenses?" "Yes. I trusted him." A few taps later, Lena's expression shifted. "Well, trust has a paper trail. The screen filled with spreadsheets, transaction lists, and wire transfers. Amber Design LLC, Amber Interiors, Amber Consulting Services." Each line was another wound. Lena clicked one entry, a $35,000 transfer labeled marketing collaboration. "That's your account, Grace. He moved money from your savings to fund this." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "He used me to fund her." The room went quiet. Her mind flashed back the day of that pitch meeting, Amber's teasing smile. He hadn't been pitching investors. He'd been pitching her designs, her ideas, wrapped in Amber's name. Lena turned the screen toward her. "There's more. Look here." An email appeared, subject line, "Future plans." Ryan's words. "Once this new business takes off, we'll finally be free." She doesn't need to know. She's so trusting, she never checks the statements. "It's all under your name for now, cleaner that way." Amber's reply. "Perfect." She's too busy trying to be the perfect wife to notice. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Her body stiffened. Lena hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you want me to keep going?" Grace straightened, wiping her eyes. "Yes, I need to see everything." Minutes passed as line after line of evidence filled the screen, account numbers, transfers, hidden emails. "Look at this," Lena said, pointing. "A charge from Vancini Jewelers, $8,000, coded to client gifts. And here, the Grand Hotel, suite, 5 nights. Client accommodations." Each discovery cut deeper, but also carved something new inside her resolve. Lena exhaled, pushing back. "Grace, this is systematic embezzlement. It's fraud. I can help you file everything tomorrow. You'd win. Easily." Grace's gaze stayed on the monitor. "No," she said quietly. "I don't want to win like that." Lena frowned. "Then what do you want?" Grace looked up, her eyes steady, now calm, almost eerie in their clarity. "I want truth. He just divorced a woman he thinks is broke and unemployed. What's the first thing an arrogant man like that does?" A beat of silence. A slow, cold smile spread across Lena's face. "He files for spousal support." Grace nodded. "Exactly. Let him. I want him to walk into court and demand money from the woman he's been robbing, and I want him to destroy himself trying to hide from it." Lena leaned back, crossing her arms. "That's a dangerous kind of patience." Grace almost smiled. "It's the only kind I have left." The clock ticked. Grace gathered the printed records into a folder. When she finally stood, the pendant at her neck caught the light. Lena watched her go. "Be careful, Grace. People like him. They panic when they lose control." Grace paused at the doorway. "Then maybe it's time he learns what it feels like." She walked out, her silhouette dissolving into the dim hallway. Behind her, the computer screen dimmed, leaving one last file name glowing. Amber Ryan Project, PDF. By the next sunrise, that single file would set in motion the downfall of everything Ryan thought he owned. The gavel struck once sharp, echoing, final. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. The sound rippled through the room. Ryan Coleman sat at the plaintiff's table, chin lifted, suit pressed to perfection, his lawyer whispering strategies. But beneath that confidence, there was unease. Beside him, Amber Lane crossed her legs slowly, red dress gleaming. She wore sunglasses indoors. Her expression was smug, but her foot tapped nervously. Across the aisle, the double doors opened. Every head turned. Grace Coleman stepped inside. Gone was the woman who once waited by the dinner table. This Grace moved with calm authority, every step measured. Her tailored black suit framed her like armor. The small pendant around her neck gleamed faintly. She walked to her seat beside Mr. Benson. The courtroom seemed to still. Ryan smirked faintly, leaning toward Amber. She looks like she's playing. Dress up. Amber chuckled softly. Maybe she finally learned how to look expensive. But their laughter faltered when Grace met their gaze, not with bitterness, but with the steady calm of someone who already knew the ending. The judge, Honorable Judge Harper, an older woman with a reputation for precision, adjusted her glasses. Mr. Coleman, she began. You filed for spousal support claiming financial dependency on your ex-wife after marital dissolution. Is that correct? Ryan straightened. Yes, Your Honor. Grace left me with nothing. She controlled our finances, and after her job loss, she emptied the accounts. Murmurs rippled through the room. Grace sat still. Judge Harper turned to Benson. Mr. Benson, your client's response? Benson rose slowly. Your Honor, the plaintiff's statement is false. We have substantial evidence proving Mr. Packen Coleman not only accessed joint funds without consent, but also committed fraud by misrepresenting over $200,000 in personal expenditures as business expenses, directly embezzling from my client's trust stipend. Ryan's smirk vanished, his lawyer tensed. The judge lifted a brow. You have proof of this? Benson nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Permission to submit Exhibit B. He handed a folder to the clerk. The large screen behind the judge lit up with an image. Ryan's email correspondence with Amber. The subject line, future plans. Gasps filled the courtroom. Amber's eyes darted across the text, her name, her words. She turned sharply to Ryan. You told me you deleted those, she hissed. Ryan's jaw clenched. Stay quiet, he whispered. Benson continued. The funds were redirected to Amber Design LLC, a company the plaintiff registered. What's more interesting, Your Honor, is who he registered as the sole owner. He filed all incorporation documents under Miss Lane's name, making her the sole legal recipient of the fraudulent funds. Amber's head snapped toward him. Her face went white. You used my name? The audience stirred, whispers rising. Order! Judge Harper's voice cracked. Silence in court. Amber's face flushed red. You said it was legal. You said it was temporary. You told me that was your money. You told me she was broke. Ryan leaned in close, whispering urgently. Amber, for God's sake, stop talking. But it was too late. The judge turned to her sharply. Miss Lane, do you confirm your signature on those company filings? Amber shook her head, her voice trembling. No, I never signed anything like that. He handled all the paperwork. He said it was to protect his assets. Gasps erupted again. Benson turned toward the judge. Your Honor, my client has no claim against this man. In fact, we request a counterclaim for fraud, forgery, and marital asset theft. Ryan's lawyer stood abruptly, stammering. Your Honor, this is circumstantial, Judge Harper. Slammed the gavel. Quiet. The courtroom went still. The judge's tone hardened. Mr. Coleman, based on the presented evidence, this court finds your petition for spousal support not only baseless, but fraudulent. All remaining shared assets are to be transferred to Mrs. Coleman pending investigation of financial misconduct. Ryan's face drained of color. Wait, Your Honor, please. But her voice cut through his. And Mr. Coleman, I suggest you retain counsel for the forthcoming criminal inquiry. This court will forward documentation to the district attorney's office. A cold silence followed. Amber rose abruptly, shaking her head. I'm not going down for this, Ryan. You said you'd protect me. He reached for her arm, but she yanked it away. You ruined me. Her voice echoed in the chamber before she stormed out, flashes from the press cameras following her. Ryan stood alone now, sweating, shoulders sinking. Across the aisle, Grace finally looked at no anger, no gloating, just quiet, steady truth. He opened his mouth to speak, but she simply said, You always said you'd handle everything. I suppose you finally did. The bailiff approached, handing him a notice, his assets frozen. He stared at the paper blankly, lips parted. Grace, what did you do? She rose calmly, gathering her documents. I didn't destroy you, Ryan. You did that yourself. The courtroom watched her walk out composed, graceful, untouchable. Behind her, Ryan sank into his chair, reporters shouting his name. Benson followed her quietly. Justice was poetic today, Grace. She didn't answer. Her eyes were distant. Outside the courthouse, the wind lifted her hair. She paused, the pendant at her throat catching the sunlight like fire. What waited for her next wasn't peace, it was something far colder and far more powerful than revenge. The courthouse doors burst open. Flashes exploded like lightning. Reporters filled the cell. Steps, microphones raised, voices overlapping, questions sharp and hungry. Grace Coleman, is it true you're worth $200 million? Did your husband really divorce you by text? Mrs. Coleman, what do you plan to do next? The sound was deafening, a wave of chaos, lights and noise. But in the middle of it all, Grace walked forward in silence. Head high, shoulders steady. The same woman who once trembled over a text now moved through a sea of cameras like she was built from glass and steel. Behind her, Ryan Coleman stumbled through the doors, nearly blinded by the flashes. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, tie loose, face pale. The crowd swarmed him instantly. Ryan, any comment about the fraud charges? Is it true you forged your wife's signature? Did you know she was an heiress? His jaw clenched as he tried to push through the chaos. Cameras captured everything. From the corner of her eye, Grace saw Amber Lane shoved forward by the press, her red dress no longer glamorous. She looked furious, humiliated. Amber rounded on Ryan, her voice cutting through the noise. You lied to me, she hissed, loud enough for every microphone. You said you had everything under control. Amber, not here, he muttered, trying to steady her arm. But she yanked away, eyes flashing. You used my name for fraud. Do you realize what you've done to my career? My clients are gone, I've been blacklisted. Her voice cracked. You ruined me, Ryan. The cameras loved it. Reporters shouted, flashes intensified. Amber shoved him hard against a car door before storming off through the crowd, tears streaking her makeup. Ryan stood there, dazed as laughter and shouting filled the air. Every lens turned to him, capturing his downfall. He turned desperately, searching through the chaos until his eyes found Grace a few steps away, calm, centered, untouchable. Grace, he called out, pushing through the reporters. Grace, please wait. She stopped. The crowd went silent, waiting. He stumbled closer, his voice breaking. We can fix this. I made mistakes, I know that. But I thought I was losing everything, and I panicked. Grace turned slowly, her expression unreadable. You didn't panic, Ryan. You chose. He stepped closer, ignoring the cameras. Please, I don't care about the money. I just want you back. We can start over. For a moment, time seemed to hold still. Grace's gaze softened, just slightly. Then she spoke, voice steady but quiet. You left me with a message, remember? Just words on a screen. So here's mine. She took a small breath. I forgive you, Ryan. He looked up, hope flickering. Then, but, she said softly, cutting him off. Forgiveness doesn't mean return. Her voice carried like a whisper, but it was louder than anything. He stared at her, face crumpling. Grace, please. I have nothing left. She tilted her head slightly. Then now you finally understand what you gave me. Nothing. Her words landed like glass shattering. Ryan stood frozen, his shoulders sinking as the weight of his actions finally crushed him. The crowd gasped. Cameras zoomed in. The man who once mocked her strength was now broken before the whole world. Grace, he pleaded, tears mixing with rain that had just begun to fall. I'm sorry. Grace looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then she turned and walked past him, calm, composed. Reporters shouted her name again, but she didn't speak. In the noise, her silence became power. Every step she took forward was another piece of her life reclaimed. As she reached her car, she finally spoke a quiet voiceover. He taught me that silence was weakness, but he was wrong. Silence isn't weakness, it's control. The door closed, shutting out the noise. The cameras caught one last image. Grace looking straight ahead, calm, free, unstoppable. Behind her, Ryan stood on the courthouse steps, drenched, broken, alone as the press surrounded him. Headlines began flashing across screens inside news vans. Text divorce backfires, wife revealed as $200 million heiress. Betrayal turned justice. Grace Coleman wins everything. And as her car disappeared into traffic, the camera lingered on her face, peaceful, distant, yet still fierce. Grace thought the storm had ended, but sometimes even peace hides one last surprise. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Grace Coleman stepped out, heels echoing against the polished marble floor. The golden logo of her father's company, Coleman Industries, gleamed above the reception desk. Employees turned as she passed. Smiles, respectful nods. Some whispered her name with quiet admiration. For years, she had walked these halls as the founder's daughter. Today, she walked them as the owner. Her pace was steady, her expression calm, but her heart thrummed with emotion. The world had seen her broken, humiliated, betrayed. Now, it would see her rise. She paused before the large portrait of her father that hung near the boardroom, his eyes kind, his smile proud. Her reflection appeared beside his in the glass frame, 2 generations connected by the same quiet strength. Her voice, soft and steady, filled the silence. He left me wealth, but life taught me worth. A gentle breeze from the air vents stirred her hair, carrying the scent of legacy. Her phone buzzed in her hand. The screen lit up. Ryan Coleman, 3 missed calls. A second notification followed. Amber Lane. I'm sorry. Grace stared at them for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Then, with one small motion, she blocked them both. No anger, no hesitation. She turned toward the panoramic window. The morning sun streamed through the glass, painting her in gold. The pendant at her neck shimmered the final symbol of everything she had survived. Her eyes lifted to the skyline, and she smiled not for victory, but for peace. Some losses, she whispered, are blessings disguised as betrayal. The music swelled. The light brightened. Unaware his wife secretly owned the company. Signing his $20 billion deal, husband kicked her out of his promotion party. What she did next crushed him. He didn't just ignore her. He didn't just embarrass her. He stood in the center of his own promotion party, confetti still falling, cameras still flashing, and pointed at the woman who had supported him for years, the woman he believed was just admin, and ordered security to escort her out like she was a stranger. A stranger who wasn't worthy of sharing his spotlight. That night, Emily Ross walked into that celebration wearing the same quiet dignity she always carried, already holding a secret that could destroy everything he was bragging about. Years earlier, in silent boardrooms and under confidential contracts, she had signed the documents that made her the hidden majority owner of Lexington Dynamics, the company her husband's firm was about to sign a $20 billion deal with. She wasn't there for attention. She wasn't there for credit. She was there to support her husband, because even after months of coldness, she still believed in him. But instead of pride, she found Daniel laughing with another woman, his consultant, who clung to his arm like she belonged there more than Emily ever had. She found coworkers whispering behind her back, and she found Daniel himself looking at her as if her presence alone ruined the image he was desperately trying to show off. "Why did you even come?" he snapped. Then he nodded to security, and in front of the entire room, he let them walk her out. He thought he was fixing an embarrassment. He thought he was protecting his reputation. He thought the company signing his dream deal would never notice. What he never imagined was this. The woman he had just pushed out of the room was the majority owner of that very company, the silent force behind the signing, and the only person with the power to freeze his future, crush his promotion, and end everything he had just celebrated. Dear viewers, thank you for being here with me today. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's quiet strength be drowned out by arrogance. When you tap that subscribe button, you stand beside every underestimated partner, every silenced voice, and every person quietly planning a comeback. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The room shook with the sharp buzz of Emily Ross's phone, snapping the quiet night in half. She jerked her head up from the desk, eyes strained from hours of reading fine print. A half-finished contract lay open in front of her, red marks streaked across the margins like battle scars. The air felt tense, heavy, as if something important was about to shift, something she could feel in her chest before she could explain it. Emily, 32 years old, self-made, steady-handed, and quiet by nature, sat alone in the small home office she had built inside the corner of their house. The room wasn't fancy, it wasn't large, but every inch of it held her history, her fight, her sacrifices, and the truth she had never shared with her husband. The walls were lined with binders, prototypes, business plans, all showing the long path she had walked. At the center of the room stood a tall corkboard covered in old notes, early drafts, and scribbled ideas. In the top left corner was a worn blueprint labeled Lexington Dynamics Initial Concept Year 1. She had pinned it there 6 years ago when she still believed she could grow something meaningful from nothing but determination and long nights. Her eyes drifted to a faded photograph pinned next to it. Emily at age 22. Same dark eyes, but a much thinner face. She sat on the floor of a cramped apartment, surrounded by borrowed textbooks and an old laptop streaming free business law tutorials. That version of her had lived on instant noodles and hope, writing her company's first name on a dollar store whiteboard as if it were a sacred promise. The memory hit her like a soft ache. Back then, Emily had met Daniel Ross, charming, confident, 2 years older, full of easy laughter and grand plans. He was 24, just starting in corporate sales. He thought she worked in admin, and because she feared being judged for dreaming too big, she never corrected him. She let him believe she was ordinary, simple, someone without ambition. He told her it made him feel grounded, and she accepted it. It was easier than admitting she spent her nights building a company instead of sleeping. Emily blinked herself back into the present and reached for a suspicious envelope sitting on the desk. Its label read, "Acquisition complete, confidential." Her heartbeat quickened. This envelope represented everything she had fought for, every late night, every mistake, every success. It held formal confirmation that the last stage of her quiet acquisition and restructuring of Lexington Dynamics was complete, locking in the control she had secretly held for years over the very company Daniel's employer now desperately needed a $20 billion partnership with. But this truth remained buried beneath a veil of LLCs and quiet contracts. Nobody, not even Daniel, knew she held that kind of power. Her phone buzzed again. A new message flashed on the screen from her lawyer, Linda. Signing reception confirmed. Apex will send Daniel as lead negotiator. He'll be there. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Not fear, not shock. Something deeper. Something she hadn't felt in years. A knock sounded on the doorframe. Daniel walked in without waiting for a reply. He was 34 now, taller, more polished, carrying the smooth confidence of a man climbing a corporate ladder fast. His tie was loose from a long day, and his face carried the kind of tired pride he often wore after receiving praise at work. But he didn't see her exhaustion. He didn't see the hours she poured into documents that affected entire industries. He saw only his version of her, someone doing little admin projects. Daniel glanced at her papers with mild amusement. Still up? You work too hard on that. What do you call it? Your side hobby? Emily slid the envelope a little under a stack of folders before he could notice the label. She forced a small smile. It's not a hobby, it's important. Sure, he murmured, already pulling out his phone. His attention drifted to the glowing screen as if her words barely brushed against his mind. He didn't say it unkindly. He said it without thinking, because he had never really seen what she did. She had spent years shrinking her achievements so he wouldn't feel overshadowed. Years downplaying her intelligence so he wouldn't feel small. And now the distance between them had grown too far for her to cross alone. Emily's phone buzzed again. This time Linda followed up. We'll review press strategy tomorrow. Also heard Apex is planning a big promotion party for Daniel before the signing. You sure you're okay with him being the face? Emily swallowed. The promotion party. Tomorrow night. So he'd be celebrated. Under a spotlight she helped build without knowing it. When she saw the final line, her stomach tightened. If things go wrong publicly, it could affect the signing optics. We'll talk. Daniel looked up casually. Who's that? Work, she answered quickly, letting the phone fall face down. She stared at the corkboard again. The blueprint, the old whiteboard photo, the first sketch of her company logo. Everything suddenly felt heavier, as if her past and her present were finally colliding. A quiet thought slipped into her mind, chilling but clear. If he's the one they're sending into that signing, then everything is about to change. Daniel's voice blasted through the bedroom as he practiced his speech, his tone sharp, commanding, almost aggressive. The mirror shook slightly each time he pointed at his own reflection, as if directing a room full of executives who didn't exist. He repeated the opening line again and again, tightening his jaw, adjusting his suit, raising his chin higher each time. The intensity in his movements filled the entire house, leaving no space for quiet. Emily stood in the hallway watching him, her hands still holding the phone from the messages she received the night before. The words, "Apex will send Daniel as lead negotiator. He'll be there," and "promotion party" echoed in her mind like a warning drum. But Daniel didn't notice her expression. He didn't notice much these days. Daniel Ross, 34, newly promoted vice president at Apex Corporation, had become someone she barely recognized. Once he used to laugh easily, relaxed, approachable. Now he moved like a man convinced the world was watching him. He inspected every detail, the shine of his shoes, the cut of his suit, the tone of his voice, as if perfection itself would guarantee success. He rehearsed again, louder this time. "And securing this partnership with Lexton Dynamics will redefine our position in the industry." Emily flinched. Lexton Dynamics, her company, her name nowhere on record, her ownership hidden behind an LLC she acquired through a quiet merger, one she built with her own exhaustion. A memory flickered. Flashback. Emily sat in a small glass conference room 3 years earlier. She was tired, hair pulled back, eyes heavy from nights without rest. Her lawyer, Linda Carter, a calm middle-aged woman, slid a thick document across the table and said, "With this structure, Emily, nobody will link you to the company unless you decide to reveal it. Your ownership stays invisible. You get the control, the board gets stability, and your personal life stays separate." Emily remembered how relieved she felt. Back then, she wanted to shield Daniel. She believed her growing success might intimidate him. She believed giving him space to shine would help their marriage. Back then, she never imagined he would outgrow her, outgrow the version of her he thought she was. She blinked out of the memory as Daniel practiced another part of his speech. His voice had taken on a smug rhythm. "Once this deal is signed, I'll be untouchable," he declared. He adjusted his cufflinks again, new ones he bought just yesterday. Gold, loud, expensive, a symbol of how quickly he had become obsessed with the image he wanted the world to see. Emily stepped into the room. "You're practicing a lot. Are you nervous about tonight?" Daniel turned too fast, irritation flashing across his face before he could hide it. "Emily, please, not now. You don't understand how big this is. The promotion party is practically a pre-celebration for the signing." Her chest tightened, not from his words, but from how casually he dismissed her. Again. She tried to speak gently. "I know it's big. I just wanted to check on you." "Well, don't," he snapped, then sighed dramatically. "I'm under enough pressure. Last thing I need is questions." He turned away and picked up his phone. It buzzed immediately, lighting up with a new message. A preview appeared clearly this time. The contact name visible. Maya, consultant. "She won't be a problem tonight." Emily's heart sank. The "she" didn't need explanation. She didn't know every detail. She didn't want to guess. But she understood enough. Daniel chuckled softly at the screen. He didn't look up. He didn't see Emily watching. He didn't see how her shoulders lowered slightly in tired acceptance. She didn't accuse him. She didn't argue. She had no energy left for fights that would lead nowhere. Instead, she turned and walked back to her small office, the only place where she still felt like herself. Her desk lamp cast a warm glow over the documents scattered across the surface. The envelope marked "Acquisition Complete, Confidential" remained hidden but present, like a quiet reminder of the life she built without applause. She sank into her chair and let out a long breath. Daniel's voice still echoed faintly from the bedroom, full of confidence that had no room for her. Her phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from her lawyer. "We need to talk about Daniel attending the signing. Urgent. His public image at the promotion party will affect how the board views Apex." Emily stared at the screen, the weight of the message settling into her bones. Something was coming, something she couldn't stop anymore. A quiet thought rose, chilling and certain. If Daniel walks into that signing like the man he is now, nothing will remain the same. The sound of hangers clattering together exploded through the bedroom closet as Emily yanked dresses aside with sudden force. The energy in her movements was sharp, almost desperate, as if she was fighting something invisible that pressed against her chest. Her breath came in short bursts. Every dress she touched felt wrong. Too bright, too dull, too much, too little. Nothing seemed to match the heaviness sitting in her stomach. The party was only hours away, not the signing, not the official deal. The promotion party Apex was throwing to celebrate Daniel becoming vice president. The party everyone in his world seemed to care about more than anything else. And after everything Daniel had said the past week, she wasn't even sure she should go. Emily stopped, hands trembling slightly, and pressed her forehead against the closet door. The rush of intensity finally slowed, sliding into a quiet ache that spread through her chest. She pulled back a simple, elegant navy blue dress. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was calm, like her. The kind of outfit a woman would choose when she wanted to support someone she loved without taking any attention. She laid the dress on the bed and sat beside it, smoothing the fabric thoughtfully. Despite everything Daniel had done recently, the dismissive comments, the hidden messages, the sharp tone, she still planned to stand by him. It wasn't because she was weak. It wasn't because she needed him. It was because she remembered who he used to be, and because somewhere inside her, she hoped he might still see the woman who had believed in him long before anyone else did. Her fingers tightened around the dress. A memory pulled her backward. Flashback. Young Emily, just 22, stood in a broken-down office with peeling wallpaper, dusty windows, and old floors that creaked with every step. She was packing boxes filled with the last pieces of her first failed attempt at starting a business. The air smelled like old paper and defeat, but she wasn't crying. She was smiling. She pressed her hand against the wall and whispered to herself, "One day this will be mine." A tall, older man stepped into the room. This was Mr. Hale, her mentor, one of the first business advisors who believed she had something rare. He adjusted his glasses and looked at her with gentle approval. He said, "Power is loud when insecure, quiet when real." Emily held those words close. They shaped everything she did after that. She didn't show off. She didn't brag. She didn't shine publicly. She worked in silence until her silence became influence. The memory faded, leaving her sitting on the bed once more, staring at her dress as if it held all the choices she'd ever made. She took a long, steady breath and stood. Her eyes drifted toward Daniel's laptop on the desk across the room. The screen glowed faintly, left open, as if calling to her. That uneasy feeling crept back into her chest. She stepped closer, not snooping, just intending to close it. But then she saw the email on the screen. Promotion party guest list, spouses optional, and beneath it, a small checkbox labeled bringing spouse. Daniel had left it unchecked. In a separate column, she noticed another field, guest of honor if applicable. Typed neatly beside it was a name she had seen only once on his phone before. Maya Reese, consultant. It felt like a quiet punch, not loud, not dramatic, just painfully clear. She stared at the screen, blinking slowly, her throat tight. She wasn't angry. She wasn't surprised. She was hurt. Hurt in a way that came after years of pretending things were still good. Emily closed the laptop gently, almost tenderly, as if the truth inside it might spill out if she made a sound. She walked back to her bed, picked up her phone with steady fingers, and typed the simplest message she could manage. "Should I come tonight?" Her thumb hesitated above the send button. Then she pressed it. Moments later, her phone buzzed. Daniel's reply appeared, casual and cold. "If you want, just don't draw attention." The words hit harder than the unchecked box, and harder than the name in the guest of honor field. Emily stood still, the dress hanging limply from her hand, as if she had forgotten how to move. A hollow silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. His message wasn't a request. It was a boundary, a line drawn quietly, showing exactly where she stood in his world. And deep in her chest, something shifted, small, quiet, but powerful. She set the dress down, no longer certain why she was going at all. Yet she knew she would still show up, not for him, but to see something for herself, something she could no longer ignore. As she turned off the lights, her phone lit up again with a new notification, this time from the party organizers. A single line stood out. Special introduction planned for Daniel Ross and his guest of honor. Emily stared at it, her breath catching. She knew now the guest of honor probably wasn't her. The music blasted through the speakers even though the guests hadn't arrived yet, shaking the air in the half-finished party hall. Technicians tested lights, workers rushed around adjusting decorations, and in the center of it all, Daniel stood laughing loudly with a woman Emily had never met in person before. His laughter was sharp, too loud, too eager. The intensity of it cut across the room like a blade. The woman beside him was younger, stylish, confident. Her name was Maya Reese, 27, a consultant brought in to help Apex Corporation prepare for the Lexton Dynamics deal and polish Daniel's image as the face of the partnership. But what nobody openly said, not yet, was something Emily could sense instantly. Maya was not just a consultant. She stood close, far too close. Her fingers brushed Daniel's arm with a slow, familiar touch, and Daniel didn't pull away. The intensity in the room slowly softened, turning into an uneasy quiet inside Emily's chest. She watched from the doorway, unseen for the first few seconds, taking in the scene without moving. Her heartbeat slowed painfully, each beat heavy and cold. Maya leaned in, laughing at something Daniel whispered. She placed her hand on his chest with an ease that did not belong to a consultant. Daniel smiled, wide, proud, almost showing off. Emily swallowed hard. She forced herself to walk inside. The hall was decorated with gold banners, soft lights, and elegant tables. The hotel staff moved around them, finalizing place cards and checking the sound system. Everything screamed success, ambition, celebration. Everything seemed built to highlight Daniel. As Emily stepped closer, Maya's smile faded. Her eyes flicked toward Emily, scanning her up and down with a mixture of curiosity and irritation. Maya said quietly, just loud enough for Daniel to hear, "She showed up?" Her voice wasn't surprised. It was annoyed, like Emily's presence was an inconvenience. Daniel stiffened for a second before giving Maya a reassuring look. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I'll handle it. Tonight is about the promotion, the executives, and the signing image. No drama." His voice hung in the air like a cold breeze. Emily stood only a few steps away now, close enough to hear every word. She felt a pressure in her chest, tight, sharp, but not unfamiliar. She had felt something like this before, years ago, when Daniel first started guarding his phone, when he changed his passwords, when he smiled at messages he didn't explain. A short flashback flickered in her memory. Emily had walked into the living room 2 weeks earlier. Daniel sat on the couch, shoulders hunched, typing quickly on his phone. As soon as Emily stepped in, he tilted the screen away. She asked softly, "Everything okay?" He nodded too fast. "Yeah, just work," he said. But when the message preview appeared, she had seen the end of a sentence. "Look perfect beside me tonight." She didn't know who he meant. She didn't ask. A part of her already knew. The memory faded. Now she stood only a few feet from Maya, the woman who completed that text message. Emily forced a polite smile. "Daniel, I didn't know you had help organizing tonight's event." Daniel's jaw tightened. "This is Maya," he said, voice too flat. "She's consulting for the company, helping with my image before the signing." Maya stepped forward, offering a hand. "I've been working very closely with Daniel these past months," she said, letting the words linger with meaning. Emily shook her hand gently, feeling Maya's confidence like a slap. Maya's touch was firm, as if trying to establish dominance in a quiet, subtle way. Emily didn't respond. She didn't create a scene. She didn't need to. But she felt it, the shift, the silent distance growing wider between her and Daniel. A space Maya now filled with ease. Emily forced herself to turn away. "Excuse me," she murmured. She walked toward the restroom, steady, calm, controlled. But when she reached the hallway, 2 of Daniel's co-workers passed behind her. They didn't notice she could hear them. One whispered, "Why did he invite her? HR said the guest of honor is that consultant." The other replied, "She doesn't fit. Everyone knows he'll show up with Maya soon anyway." Emily froze. For a moment she felt weightless, like the floor beneath her had disappeared. Her fingers curled around the edge of the restroom door, steadying herself. Her breath trembled, but she didn't cry. She wouldn't give the moment that power. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, staring at her reflection. Her heart was bruised, but her eyes held something new, something rising from deep inside, quiet but strong. Then her phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel. "Where did you go? Don't do anything weird. Tonight has to look perfect." Emily stared at the glowing screen. A cold calm settled in her chest, because beyond the mirror, beyond the whispers, beyond Maya, Emily knew she was walking towards something far bigger than humiliation. A shift was coming. The music exploded through the ballroom the moment Daniel stepped onto the small stage, the speakers shaking as the crowd erupted into applause. Lights flashed wildly, photographers snapped pictures, and confetti rained from above like a storm of celebration. Daniel raised his glass high, soaking in every scream, every cheer, every admiring stare. He wasn't just enjoying the moment, he was drunk on it. The hotel's event staff moved like a practice machine around the edges, servers topping up drinks, security watching the doors, a coordinator hovering near the stage, making sure everything looked perfect for Apex's photos and for the executives who would later attend the signing. Emily stood at the back of the room, her heart pounding at the sheer intensity of the scene. It felt like the entire world was looking at Daniel, everyone except him looking at her. She watched him smile, watched him bow, watched him play the role of the rising star he had worked so hard to become. A softer part of her remembered cheering for him once, back when he still treated her like someone who mattered. The noise gradually dimmed inside her chest, replaced by the quiet ache she had carried for months. She smoothed the skirt of her navy blue dress, took a deep breath, and began walking toward him. She didn't want a dramatic moment. She only wanted to congratulate her husband. As she stepped closer through the crowd, she saw Maya already standing beside Daniel, her hand resting lightly on his lower back. Maya's smile was sharp, polished, full of confidence. Too confident for a consultant. Emily's steps slowed. The event coordinator leaned toward Daniel with a microphone, smiling. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our newly promoted Vice President, Daniel Ross, and of course a special thanks to his consultant, Maya Reese, who has helped prepare Apex for its upcoming partnership with Lexington Dynamics." The words "special thanks" hit like confirmation. The guest of honor line from the email made painful sense. Just then, Daniel spotted Emily. His smile faltered, the briefest crack, before he forced it back into place for the audience. Emily raised a hand slightly, offering a small smile. "Congrats, Daniel." She took one more step forward. Before she could get any closer, Maya turned to adjust her glass of red wine, shifting in the tight space between them. The crowd pressed, a server passed behind her, and in a movement that looked like an accident to everyone watching, but felt deliberate to Emily, Maya's arm swung just enough for the drink to slip from her hand and spill directly onto Emily's dress. "Oh," Maya gasped in fake shock, pressing a hand to her mouth. "I'm so sorry. The crowd bumped me." The wine soaked into the front of Emily's dress instantly, dark red spreading like a wound. Emily froze, stunned. "It's okay. Accidents happen," she murmured quietly, already stepping back to move away from the center of attention. But Maya's eyes flicked sideways. There was nothing accidental in the way her gaze lingered with satisfaction. A few people chuckled. A phone tilted up, recording. Someone whispered, "Yikes, wrong night to be messy." Daniel's expression turned tight, embarrassed, irritated. The event coordinator looked nervous. Cameras pointed in their direction. The company's senior executives were watching. This was the night Apex wanted clean photos and flawless PR for the upcoming signing. Maya leaned in just enough for Daniel to hear. "You need to control this. She's making a scene in front of the partners." Emily wasn't doing anything, just standing there, trying to hold the edges of her ruined dress together. But Daniel's pride, swollen from all the applause and pressure, snapped under the weight of those eyes and that whisper. His voice cut through the music. "Why did you even come?" The words struck Emily like a slap in front of everyone. Daniel stepped closer, his voice rising. "You're embarrassing me. Look at you. Your dress is ruined. You're drawing attention. Why would you show up like this tonight of all nights? We talked about keeping things low-key." Emily opened her mouth, stunned, hurt, breathless. "I came to support you." But Daniel didn't hear her, or didn't want to. He looked toward two security guards standing near the stage. Hotel security, hired for the night, men who had no idea this woman was his wife. "Can you escort her out?" "Politely, please," he said, still speaking into a microphone that wasn't fully muted. "She needs to clean up. This is an important night." The room went silent for a moment. The security guards walked toward her immediately. They didn't grab her, didn't shove her, but they still positioned themselves on either side of her in a way that made her humiliation complete. "I can walk by myself," Emily whispered, but they kept in step with her, doing their job. People turned their heads, some whispered, some pitied her, some didn't bother hiding their smirks. Emily felt her mascara beginning to run, smudging under her eyes from the sting of tears she refused to let fall. She lifted her chin slightly, refusing to break down in front of these people. Not here, not now. As she walked past Maya, the younger woman leaned in just a little and whispered with a cruel smile, "Some people don't belong in these circles." The words burned. Emily didn't respond. She wouldn't give Maya the satisfaction. But the pain sat heavy in her chest, a thick pressure that stole her breath. The guards released her once she reached the front doors. The cold night air hit her face, mixing with the heat of shame still burning across her skin. She stepped outside, feeling small in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her phone buzzed. She wiped her eyes quickly before checking it, half expecting another harsh message from Daniel. But it wasn't Daniel. It was her lawyer, Linda. He crossed the line. Multiple witnesses reached out. "The board approved what we discussed. Meet tomorrow." Emily stared at the message, her heartbeat slowing, then settling into a steady, cold calm. Something inside her, something long buried, stirred awake. Her humiliation had just become the final push she didn't know she needed. As she stood alone outside the party, the faint echo of music behind her, she felt the future shifting. And somewhere deep inside she knew, tomorrow would not be a day Daniel Ross expected. Emily's hands slammed against the steering wheel the moment she pulled into the empty parking lot, the car shaking under the force. Her breath came fast, too fast, as if the humiliation from the party had followed her into the vehicle and wrapped around her throat. The intense pressure in her chest felt like it might burst, and for the first time in years, she didn't try to hide it. She let herself feel the full weight of everything she had been holding back. Her mascara was smeared, her dress was ruined, her heart was bruised, and she had never felt more alone. Slowly, painfully, the rush of emotion fell into a quiet stillness. The parking lot was silent, just dim corner lights flickering overhead. The world outside didn't move. Emily rested her forehead on the steering wheel, letting silence fill the space Daniel had emptied long ago. Her phone, lying on the passenger seat, still showed Linda's last message from minutes earlier. "He crossed the line. Multiple witnesses contacted us. Board approved what we discussed. Meeting first thing tomorrow." Emily had replied with only 2 words, "I'll come." She exhaled, the memory of hitting send still fresh in her chest. Memory slipped in without warning. Flashback. She saw herself years earlier, newly married, sitting at their small kitchen table, smiling as she filled out applications for side jobs because Daniel's salary alone couldn't cover their bills. She remembered quietly paying rent when he wasn't looking, slipping grocery money into his wallet so he could feel proud. She remembered the long nights she spent working at her tiny desk, building ideas, drafting proposals, shaping the future of a business he didn't even know existed. While she typed until dawn, Daniel slept peacefully, assuming she was doing extra admin work. Another memory surfaced, the night Daniel had held her hands and promised in a soft voice, "I'll take care of you one day. You deserve so much." She had believed him, because back then, he had meant it. The flashbacks faded, leaving a sharper truth in their place. He didn't just fall out of love. He simply grew into a version of himself that could no longer see her. He outgrew the woman he assumed she was, quiet, safe, unimpressive, the woman he believed he had surpassed. But Emily had never been that woman. And now, the version of her he dismissed was the one holding the power he needed most. She lifted her head slowly, wiping the streaks beneath her eyes. The trembling in her hands eased, replaced by a calm certainty she had not felt in a long time. She reached into the passenger seat and grabbed her laptop. It opened with a soft click, the bright screen lighting up the dark interior of the car. Her desktop appeared, organized, intentional, full of documents that carried real weight. Not imaginary work, not a hobby, her life's work. She clicked a folder labeled Lexington Dynamics Executive. Inside, a new file waited, sent earlier that evening by Linda after the party. Board meeting, emergency ethics and acquisition response. Emily opened it. Her heartbeat steadied as she read the agenda. Bullet points outlined their concerns. VP from Apex involved in public misconduct. Consultant relationship creating ethical conflict. Risk to reputation ahead of $20 billion signing. Required corrective action and decision on deal status. The VP from Apex wasn't just a title. They meant Daniel. She had the authority to attend. The board recognized her not just as an investor, but as majority owner. She had the right to weigh in on how Lexington handled its partners, and now she had the will. A slow breath escaped her lips, no longer shaky. The version of Emily who had stayed silent for years died somewhere in that parking lot. She whispered into the quiet air, voice steady, calm, almost frightening in its certainty. I built it alone. I'll protect it alone. The words hung there, powerful and final. She closed the laptop gently, her eyes lifting toward the faint glow on the horizon. Somewhere out there, Daniel stood under falling confetti, celebrating a future he believed belonged to him. Tomorrow, in a boardroom he didn't know she controlled, he would learn the truth. And in the next scene, the first move of her quiet storm would begin. The doors slammed behind Emily with a metallic thud that echoed through the marble lobby, snapping the morning silence in half. Security guards straightened the moment they saw her badge, founder access swinging from her neck. The sudden shift in their posture filled the air with immediate intensity. People watching from the receptionist desk felt it too. Something was different today, something powerful. Emily didn't slow her steps. Her heels struck the floor in a sharp, steady rhythm as she walked through the high-security corporate building that belonged to her, even if most of the world didn't know it. The glass walls reflected her calm expression, but inside her resolve burned with a cold fire. Just hours earlier, she had been pushed out of a party like an unwanted guest. Now she walked as the silent owner of a company worth billions. The intensity settled into a deep, cold quiet as she stepped inside the private elevator. She pressed the top floor. The doors closed, sealing her in. As the elevator rose, her reflection stared back. Still elegant, but harder now. Not broken, woken. Her mind slipped into a memory. Flashback. 3 years earlier, Emily sat in a dim conference room with only one light flickering overhead. Her original startup was falling apart. She had investors backing out, debts rising, and a competitor crushing her market. She had stayed awake for 72 hours straight, trying to save it. A soft knock came at the door. It was Mr. Hale, her old mentor. He placed a folder in front of her. There's a failing tech firm looking for a merger. They're small, but they have patents worth saving. She flipped through the papers, her hands shaking. I don't have the money to compete. Mr. Hale looked her straight in the eyes. Then buy them quietly. Merge under a new identity. If nobody knows it's you, nobody can target you or your husband. It's risky, but if anyone can make it work, it's you. That night, with courage she didn't even know she had, Emily signed the papers. She bought out the remaining shareholders one by one. She took everything that was falling apart and rebuilt it under a hidden, powerful name, Lexington Dynamics. She became the majority owner, silently, legally, alone. The elevator dinged softly, pulling her back to the present. The doors opened to a long hallway leading to a conference room with frosted glass walls. Inside, the company's top legal advisors and 2 board members waited. They stood as she entered, unsure how to greet a woman most had only heard rumors about. Emily took her seat at the head of the table. Her lawyer, Ms. Carter, mid-40s, sharp eyes, calm voice, spoke first. Emily, we reviewed the incident you reported from last night, plus the statements people sent us. Emily clasped her hands together. Daniel's public behavior and his relationship with a consultant violate multiple ethics clauses. If we go forward with this deal under his name, Lexton looks weak and careless. He cannot represent the company at a signing worth billions. One of the board members adjusted his glasses slowly. Your husband is the VP from Apex Corp? Emily nodded once. Yes, and he has no idea who owns the company he's begging. A wave of shock passed across the table. Silent, thick, undeniable. Questions flickered in their eyes, but no one asked them out loud. There wasn't time. Miss Carter straightened her notes. You have full authority to freeze the partnership negotiations until we complete the ethics review. Another lawyer added, and based on everything you described, and the footage and testimonies, it is advisable. If we don't act, regulators will ask why. Emily took a breath. Then freeze them, immediately. Change today's planned signing session to an ethics and partnership review meeting. I want him informed in the room, not through email. Her voice was calm, but every person in the room felt the weight of it. She was no longer the quiet wife in the corner of a party. She was the woman who controlled the deal that could change an entire corporation. A young legal assistant hesitated before sliding a digital tablet across the table toward her. There's one more matter. To protect the company from conflict of interest, we recommend establishing separation immediately. Emily glanced down. On the screen were divorce documents drafted in advance, as an option Linda had mentioned before. It wasn't just personal, it was legal. Staying married to the executive representing the other side would raise questions with auditors and regulators if she remained majority owner. For a moment, everything fell quiet. Her marriage, once full of promises, laughter, hopes, now sat on a glowing screen like a final chapter, waiting to be closed. Emily placed her thumb on the signature pad, but just before she pressed down, Ms. Carter said softly, "There will be consequences, Emily. For him, and for you, financial, public, emotional. This changes everything." Emily's eyes hardened. "Then let them come." Her thumb touched the screen. The signature glowed. In the legal system, the divorce process had begun, and somewhere in the building a notification pinged, signaling the first domino falling. What came next would shake Daniel's world. The boardroom doors swung open with a force that startled everyone inside, and Daniel Ross strode in like a man who already owned the future. His footsteps were bold and loud, echoing off the polished floor. He wore a fresh suit, a brighter tie, and a smile so wide it almost looked carved into his face. He didn't sit, he claimed the room. "This is it," he declared, taking his seat at the head of the visitor's side. "Let's finalize this deal and make history." He hadn't read every word of the last email from legal. He saw only Lexton requested a closed-door meeting regarding the agreement and assumed closed door meant exclusive, not emergency review. The intensity of his entrance crackled through the room. Executives exchanged looks, some impressed, some unsure, but Daniel didn't notice. His confidence was too thick, too heavy, swallowing every corner of the room. Slowly the energy softened, settling into tense anticipation as the board members of Lexton Dynamics filed in. Papers shuffled, pens clicked. A few cleared their throats. Daniel tapped his fingers on the table, humming softly, impatient for applause that wasn't coming. He didn't notice the empty seat at the far end. Not yet. The board chair, Mr. Langford, 60 stern calm, began speaking. "We will start once all key decision makers are present." Daniel leaned back with a practiced grin. "Everyone that matters is here." A few board members exchanged quiet glances. Someone whispered under their breath. Then the door behind Daniel opened. Soft footsteps entered, and the room went still. Emily walked in, not in her elegant dress from the party, not with mascara running down her cheeks. She entered wearing a fitted navy blue blazer, crisp trousers, and a badge clipped to her pocket, the badge she hadn't worn in years outside private meetings. Founder Access. Daniel froze. His smile died instantly, collapsing into confusion, shock, then something close to fear. "Emily," he croaked. What are you doing here?" Emily didn't look at him. Not yet. She walked calmly to the empty chair at the end of the table and took her seat with quiet authority. Mr. Langford stood, straightening his jacket. "Mr. Ross," he said, "allow me to introduce the majority owner of Lexton Dynamics, Miss Emily Ross." The words dropped like a stone into water, sending ripples of disbelief across the room. Daniel turned white. What? He whispered. No, no, that's not possible. Emily owns... No. He laughed nervously, looking around the table for someone to share the joke. No one laughed. Emily finally looked up, her expression calm and unreadable. Yes, Daniel, she said. I own the company. Daniel shook his head rapidly. No, you do admin work. This makes no sense. Why didn't you tell me? Emily's voice was soft, cold, controlled. You never asked. A few executives looked away, uncomfortable with how exposed Daniel suddenly seemed. Daniel leaned forward, sweating now. Emily, we can't do this here. This is my big moment. Don't ruin this. Mr. Langford cleared his throat. Mr. Ross, your conduct at last night's event and your conflict of interest with a consultant have forced the board to reconsider your eligibility for partnership. Daniel blinked fast. My what? My conduct? What conduct? It was just a party. Emily slid a file across the table. Inside were photos from the party, video stills, witness statements, ethics clauses highlighted in red. Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. Emily then slid the printed summary of their decision toward him, but not for his signature. A single note was attached. Partnership suspended pending ethical review. Gas erupted around the room. Pens dropped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel stared at the note as if it were poison. You froze the deal?" he said, his voice cracking. "Emily, you can't do this to me. This is my career." Emily's expression didn't change. "I'm not doing anything to you, Daniel. I'm protecting a company you disrespected before you even signed with it." The board chair nodded. "The partnership is suspended. Further action will be taken after the investigation. Apex will be notified formally within the hour." Daniel scrambled to gather his papers, his face red and shaking. No, you can't do this. You can't." He stopped mid-sentence as he looked at Emily, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She wasn't the quiet wife anymore. She wasn't the forgotten partner. She was the owner of the empire he needed. The meeting ended abruptly. Executives left in quiet, rushed steps. Daniel followed Emily into the hallway, grabbing her arm just out of sight of the boardroom. "You're ruining my life," he hissed. Emily pulled her arm back slowly, her eyes steady. "No, Daniel," she said. "You ruined it yourself." A shadow passed behind them. Someone approaching with serious purpose. A Lexton assistant stepped closer. "Ms. Ross, Apex's HR team just called. They've received our formal complaint and requested the evidence package." The next moment would change everything. Daniel burst through the doors of Apex Corporation the next morning with the same force he once walked in with pride. But this time the intensity came from panic. Sharp breaths, frantic steps, wide eyes. People stopped mid-conversation and turned to watch him, sensing something broken inside him. For the first time, he didn't fix his tie or straighten his posture. He rushed toward his office like a man trying to outrun a disaster already catching his heels. But the disaster had arrived before he did. A security guard, someone who always greeted him with respect, stood waiting at his office door. Daniel's badge access had been deactivated. The red light blinked coldly when he tried to scan his card. "Mr. Ross," the guard said gently, "you're required in human resources immediately." Those words cracked something inside his chest. Daniel followed, his steps shaky now, not confident. The hallway felt longer, brighter, unforgiving. Every open office door held a pair of watching eyes. Inside HR, the room was quiet. Too quiet. A woman from compliance sat beside Daniel's boss, Mr. Green, a man who once praised Daniel loudly in meetings. Today, Mr. Green looked tired, disappointed, almost distant. "Daniel," he began, "due to the ethics complaint filed by Lexton Dynamics and the evidence surrounding your conduct at your promotion event, you're suspended effective immediately." Daniel's breath caught. "Suspended? But we're..." "Under investigation," compliance added. "And depending on the findings," Mr. Green continued, "termination is likely. Lexton is our largest potential partner. Their formal statement mentions a hostile incident involving your wife and your relationship with a consultant who reports indirectly into you." Daniel stared at them. "My personal life shouldn't..." Your personal life became a public event in front of our potential partner and several of our own executives, compliance said. That makes it corporate. The intensity in the room dissolved into a slow, cold dread inside Daniel. His world, once overflowing with applause, was shrinking into a cage of consequences. He barely heard the rest. Words like misconduct, conflict of interest, policy violation, HR review, inappropriate consultant relationship flowed together, hitting him one after another. By afternoon, he was escorted out of the building he once believed he would lead. Back at his apartment, a place suddenly too quiet, Daniel sat on the couch, staring at the wall. His phone buzzed nonstop at first, then slowed, then stopped almost completely. When he tried calling coworkers, the calls went straight to voicemail. When he messaged friends, the replies were short and polite, not supportive. No one wanted to be tied to a sinking ship. Finally, he called Maya. She picked up on the second ring, her voice sharp. "What do you want, Daniel?" "They suspended me," he whispered. "Lexton filed a complaint. You have to help me talk to the board. You're part of this. You were there." "No," she snapped. "I was part of your success, not your downfall." "Maya, I have other clients and a reputation to protect," she said. "They've already asked me for a statement. I told them you pursued me. I'm not losing contracts because you couldn't control yourself at your own party." His chest tightened. "You're just going to walk away?" "I'm not sinking with you," she said, and hung up without hesitation. Daniel stared at the screen, feeling something cold spread through his stomach. Then another email arrived. Automated banking notice. "Your credit line has been temporarily reduced due to changes in employment status." Another message followed from the company benefits portal. "Bonus payment and stock options on hold pending investigation outcome." His hands shook. Everything was slipping away. The job, the reputation, the money, the future he thought he was building. He tried calling Emily, once, twice, 5 times. Each call went to voicemail. Her silence was louder than any scream. He slumped forward, covering his face with both hands. Tears hit the floor, raw, helpless tears he couldn't control. His shoulders shook as memories flooded back without mercy. Emily sitting at a small desk, typing late into the night. Emily quietly sliding money into his wallet when they struggled. Emily telling him she believed in him. Emily carrying the weight he never noticed. She wasn't just admin. She never was. He realized painfully that the woman he pushed aside was the one holding the power he now needed for survival. He had destroyed the only bridge that could have saved him, and for the first time, he understood the full size of his mistake. A knock shattered the silence. Daniel stiffened, wiping his face quickly. Maybe a friend had come. Maybe someone cared. He opened the door. A man in a gray suit stood there, holding a sealed envelope. "Daniel Ross?" the man asked. "Yes," Daniel said, voice small. The man handed him the envelope. "You've been served." Daniel blinked hard, choking on his own breath. He tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Divorce papers. Emily's digital signature already present at the bottom, filed through the court system. Before he could process the shock, his phone buzzed with a new notification. One final blow waiting for him. A court app alert. Mandatory mediation date confirmed. See details attached. The next scene would show exactly what happened in that room. 3 weeks later, the mediation room door burst open as Daniel rushed in, eyes wild, breathing hard, like a man running from a fire that had followed him for days. The intensity hit the room instantly. Papers shook on the table from the force of the door. A mediator looked up, startled. Emily, sitting quietly at the far end of the table, did not move. The weeks since his suspension had aged him. His suit no longer looked sharp. His face carried deep shadows. His phone, once a constant stream of emails and calls, now lay dark on the table. Daniel froze when he saw her. Her posture calm, her hands steady, her expression unreadable. For the first time, he hesitated before stepping closer. He lowered himself into the chair across from her, shoulders slumped, not only in defeat, but in fear of losing the one thing he never understood he needed until now. "Emily," he whispered, voice cracking, "please, just listen." The intensity of the moment softened into a heavy, quiet silence. Emily kept her gaze low, tracing the rim of her water glass with one finger. She didn't rush. She didn't tremble. She didn't fight. She simply waited. The mediator, a neutral woman in her 50s, cleared her throat. We're here today for mandatory mediation regarding the division of assets and final terms of the divorce. You'll both have a chance to speak. Daniel swallowed hard. I can change, he blurted, not waiting for structure. I swear I can. I made mistakes, stupid ones. But I didn't mean to hurt you. I was stressed. I thought you didn't care about my career. He leaned forward, desperate. I didn't know you owned Lexington. If I had known... Emily raised her eyes slowly, and the sentence died in his throat. Daniel, she said softly, this isn't about the company. He stared at her, confused, lost. She continued, voice calm, fragile but sure. This is about everything you stopped seeing, everything you stopped hearing. He opened his mouth, but Emily lifted a hand, gentle, quiet, silencing him without force. Her mind began to drift, and her expression softened as memories flickered through it. A younger Daniel, kind, hopeful, holding her hand as they walked through a small park. You deserve the world, Emily, he had said back then. One day I'll give it to you. Another flash. Daniel cooking her a simple dinner in their first apartment, burning half of it, but laughing as they ate anyway. Another. Emily working late at her desk while Daniel slept peacefully on the couch, unaware she was sacrificing sleep to keep their lives steady. Another. Daniel leaving earlier and earlier for work, answering fewer calls, smiling secretly at his phone, the distance between them growing like a silent wall. Another. The promotion party, his cruel words into a live microphone. Maya's smirk, the humiliation burning into her skin as security escorted her past strangers' phones. And finally, the boardroom, Daniel's face collapsing when the truth hit him. When he realized the woman he dismissed owned the company he needed. The flashbacks faded. Emily blinked, clearing the emotion from her eyes. She looked at Daniel again, but this time with sadness instead of anger. You didn't outgrow me, she said quietly. You outgrew the version of me you wanted me to be. Daniel touched the edge of the table, as if steadying himself. I didn't mean it. Any of it. I swear, Emily, if you give me one more chance... No, she said gently. The word wasn't loud. It wasn't harsh. But it was final. Emily reached for the divorce papers in front of her. The mediator slid a pen toward her. Her hands did not shake this time. Not like they had the night he pushed her out of the party. Not like when she had cried alone in her car. Her hand was steady, certain. She signed her name, each letter written with years of silence, pain, and awakening behind it. Daniel watched, his face crumbling. He didn't reach for the papers. He didn't argue again. He just watched the woman he never truly knew sign the end of their story. When she finished, she slid the papers across the table. Not coldly, not angrily, just peacefully. Her voice was soft, almost comforting, almost kind. I didn't crush you, Daniel, she said. I just stopped protecting you from yourself. Daniel lowered his face into his hands, shoulders shaking, regret pouring out too late. Emily stood. She gave him one last look, not of hatred, not of triumph, but of acceptance. Then she walked out of the mediation room, down the hallway, through the glass doors, into the bright, warm sunlight waiting outside. No crowds, no applause, no victory parade, just peace. Something she had earned in silence. She stepped into that sunlight as a woman free. Free from humiliation, free from doubt, free from a marriage that had slowly erased her. And as the doors closed behind her, a soft breeze brushed against her face, as if the world itself welcomed her into her new beginning. Somewhere inside, she knew this was the first day of her real life. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.